and welcome to The Retirement Architect. My name is Cynthia Defazio. I'm joined today by David Reyes. He's founder and chief financial architect of Reyes Financial Architecture. David, how are you today?
How are you? How are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much. And I know that things have been so busy for you. The last time we were together, we had so many changes we were going through. Obviously, we talked about COVID being something that was affecting the market, and then obviously we had the election that we were going through. So let me ask you, how's the new year for you so far?
It's good. You know, California being what it is, right? We're up and down. COVID is still obviously, you know, in the forefront, but hopefully in the rearview mirror pretty soon. So, you know, we're excited about 2021 and you know, the whole country is, and we think it's going to be a great year, you know, all the way around. So we're excited.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question. With talking about being excited, of course, for 2021, your clients specifically, what kind of questions are they asking you right now? You know,
Bitcoin.
Right? I know. We're hearing a lot of Bitcoin.
That's not a. I always say that's a tell to sell. You know, there's a story on Wall Street. Joe Kennedy, who was the first SEC chairman of Wall Street, and it's called the Shoeshine Boy story. And back before the stock market crash, he used to get his shoe shined every day. And this one day, the shoeshine boy comes up to him and asks him, says, you know, Mr. You know, what do you think about this stock? And so he goes, when the shoeshine boy starts asking about stock, you sell stock. And so that's true story. Supposedly he sold all of his securities, and that's how they became wealthy. And so I'm joking in the sense that, and I'm not, but when people start asking about Bitcoin, you know, it's time to probably sell. In fact, one of my clients was asking about it, and I think Bitcoin was a 40,000, and since it's dropped like 30% since he called me. So I'm like, you know, he said, I think it was a sign, right? So what that means, that's code word for the market's very exuberant. Yeah. Right, I've never seen a market go from catastrophe to, you know, COVID, market down 35%, regained all its losses in basically 5 months. Market was dropped 35%, up 55%, and it's like smooth sailing now. And now the market is extremely, you know, I don't want to say overvalued, but it's definitely extended. Yeah. So basically, you're talking a 1 year period going from, you know, overzealous market to catastrophe to, you know, COVID to where we're at today. So that's challenging. I think so. My concern is that investors and retirees are getting a little too aggressive right now, and I see that happen. If somebody's calling me about Bitcoin when it was at 10,000, you notice that I wouldn't get calls back then. They were calling when it's 40,000.
Exactly.
So it's that whole fear and greed. You know, Warren Buffett said it best. He says, when other people are fearful, be greedy, and when others are greedy, be fearful. Yeah. And so I like to follow that adage. So when clients are calling me about something like that, and TV, you know, TV show people, but that's okay. So I would say, you know, people are a little too excited about the stock market right now. Okay. And that's concerning to me. Okay.
Let me ask you the components of a well-designed retirement plan, David. Yeah. What should people be thinking about as they're approaching the retirement years?
Not Bitcoin, I'm kidding. No. The problem is there's no cash flow. So yeah, what we want to be concerned about is really two things, really, is protecting capital, right? If you have $1 million, whatever you've acquired, we want to protect that capital. Number two, we want to create income. And so they're really two diametrically opposed forces because, you know, right now the average CD rate right now is 0.15%. I checked right before the show, 0.15. Wow. Right? And so the average retiree is going to need to spend between 4 to 6% of their retirement income. That's a problem. Yeah, absolutely. So the key is, how do we protect downside and at the same time create income? Sure. So I will tell you that I think right now is the most challenging time that I've ever seen in my 25-year career for a retiree right now, this minute. Is that due to inflation, David? It's due to the fact that three things. Inflation's a big problem. We'll spend some time on today and other shows because it's that important. Okay. Number two is interest rates. We thought they were low 2 years ago. They're basically zero. I mean, you know, a 10-year Treasury bond, it was down as paying a little 0.5%. I think it's like 1% right now. And so the problem is you've got inflation that's coming back. You've got really super low interest rates, which we've had forever, but now they're lower. And so those are and the stock market's at valuations that are historic already. Yeah. So it's just to wrap your brain around all this, and it's almost better not to know. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So it's almost better to, you know, the head in the sand, because I know, and so I get concerned. Now, thank God I'm not concerned about my clients, because we're protected, but I'm concerned about about you. I'm concerned about the public. I'm concerned about retirees in general.
Sure.
Because I think it takes a lot more precise planning, and I think it does, to really have an effective, retirement where you're not concerned and worried every day about your money. And I'm just saying, if you're looking at the stock market every day and that's your retirement, you got a problem, because that's not where you want to be focused on, is my retirement going to be okay or not?
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, a big mistake that I see, that a lot of clients are too reliant upon how the stock market does to how well their retirement's going to be.
And that is definitely the benefit and the blessing, if you will, of having that well-designed retirement plan, because you're taking a look at each client's life when they come into your office. You're taking a look at what their dreams are and making sure that everything that they've worked so hard for is going to sustain them all throughout the distribution years, if you will.
Yeah, and because it's the fact is that managing money or retirement for cash flow is different than managing money for growth.
Yeah,
it's a completely different. My job is, we say, is that I want the most amount of income with the least amount of risk and never run out of money. I want the most amount of income, the least amount of risk, and never run out of money. So that's my job.
Yeah.
That's a lot different than saying I want to beat the stock market returns.
Absolutely.
It's a totally different job. So does it mean we're not going to grow our money? Of course we need to grow our money, right? And people are living longer. The average age of my clients probably 65, 67, so let's say an average life expectancy 85.
Yeah.
That's a long time. So we're not going to put the money in the mattress, but we want to make sure that we control the risk.
Sure.
So I really consider myself more of a risk manager, cash flow manager, than managing portfolios. So we're using stocks, bonds, mutual funds, annuities, real estate, whatever's out there. But the fact is that we got to focus on managing risk. And I've learned over time, if you focus on managing risk, when the market's going up, you'll participate. But when it's not, you're not going to take all those losses. And we'll talk about some concepts that we use for clients that make it kind of simple on how we do that, because the thing I see that's most troubling is there's not a lot of underlying management of risk of portfolios. Sure. Especially when markets go higher. Yeah. People forget about, stocks never fall, the market never falls. Sure. It's definitely right now it's a challenging time, for sure.
Are people often surprised to learn how much risk they're actually taking if they think they're more moderate, conservative, but then when you take a closer look, you find out that they're in a totally different realm?
Yeah, that's pretty much across the board. And so what part of our second opinion process is we do a fee assessment, we do a risk analysis. So part of what I'll do is I'll look at what is the underlying risk, and part of teaching somebody is what do you have first? Yeah. Do they know how do they know something's better or not better? Maybe what they have is fine. But validating that for them, I talk to clients all the time, and so the first thing I'm going to do is look at what you own. Is the risk appropriate? But more importantly, is it going to produce the cash flow that you need in retirement, for income, for long-term care costs, whatever things that may come up? But the fact is that yes, to answer your question directly, most clients have a lot more risk than they think they do, and they're not really. They're willing to accept that risk in the short term because they're afraid of missing out. Not all clients are like that, but a disproportionate amount of clients are becoming more aggressive than they already maybe thought they were. So that disconnect, that mental gymnastics of wanting, we want to manage to a client's goals and needs, not necessarily to what they're emotionally capable of, right? Yeah. So most people only, if you got a 5 or 6% rate of return for the rest of your life, stable compounder, you're going to be fine. Yeah. We don't need up 20, down 10. We don't need it. Sure. So that's how I want to look at portfolios, and that's what we'll look at when we do look at the risk and say, okay, how do we mitigate that for clients, and how do we not have them freak out during times like, which will happen again, right? We're going to it'll rain again.
Absolutely. The market's always volatile,
That's
up
right.
and down,
That's right.
down. Well, this is the perfect time for us to open up the phone lines to the viewers at home. Would you agree, David?
Yes.
Okay. To the viewers at home, there's a phone number to call on your screen. That number is 866-739-3775. If you have questions about how to retire with confidence and comfortably, David has the answers for you. All you have to do today is pick up the phone and call. The number is 866-739-3775. You deserve to have the retirement of your dreams and the ability to sleep comfortably at night, knowing that no matter what happens, you can weather any storm. Again, that number to call is 866-739-3775. We'll be right back with so much more after this very short commercial break.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan. This is a $999 value that we're giving away complimentary to the first 10 people who respond. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have by running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review today.
And welcome back to The Retirement Architect. My name is Cynthia Defazio. I'm joined today by David Reyes, and David is founder and chief financial architect of Reyes Financial Architecture. David, a great first segment that we're having, and obviously talking about the importance of planning for retirement, having a very well-designed, well-constructed plan that takes into consideration all these pieces and parts that form that puzzle. But we tapped on a little bit in the first segment about inflation. Let me ask you, why are you concerned about it right now?
I am. I've been doing that. I started in 1995 in the roaring 90s. That was the best market ever. The market averaged 20% compounded in the 90s. And you had bond interest rates for around 6. Think about that for a minute. So unbelievable. That was the Goldilocks period for retirees. A 20% rate of return, you're doubling your money every 5-6 years, and every 3-4 years, and so those days are probably gone. But more importantly, is a couple things that are missing there. Is first interest rates. I mean, inflation, I'm concerned about. W'll talk about that first because we've had these low interest rates forever, and then after COVID, the Federal Reserve just dropped real interest rates to 0. You were talking about the federal funds rate or the whatever instrument you want to use, a 10-year Treasury bond being like 2%, will drop to 0.5%, and now it's around 1%. And so, for the first time ever, there's a retirement planning software that I use quite a bit, and the founder, who's an economist, smart guy, Larry Kolikoff. And for the first time ever in his system, actually, he has inflation went from like 1.5% to 2%, but his real yield inside of the portfolio, so what he uses as for like a risk-free rate, he call it, is like 1.5. So for the first time ever, you actually have a negative rate of return.
Wow.
Because inflation basically is projected is going to be higher than what the income is on a bond portfolio.
Wow. Okay.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
So because because interest rates are so low and you have inflation coming back, I mean, you probably already experienced it in we were talking about real estate over the break. Lumber prices have doubled in the last year. Commodity prices are going through the roof. Food prices. Yeah. And so you're not really seeing it show up in what the government uses for their called a CPE. Which they discount, housing and energy inflation, which is kind of crazy. We're talking about housing inflation.
I know.
And so it's not a real number to me, but the fact is that is a concern for the first time since I've been an advisor, especially because most clients have a disproportionate amount of bonds in their portfolio. So like I was talking about in the retirement planning software, if it's showing a negative rate of return because you have inflation at 2 and you have interest rate income at 1 to 1.5, but most retirees have half their money in bonds, we have a problem.
Sure, makes sense.
So inflation is the culprit, number one. Number two would be bonds, bond interest rates. So it just puts a lot more stress on the portfolio, and you have a new administration. It's much more inflationary. We now have a deficit that went from 26 trillion or 24 trillion that can approach $30 trillion. Yeah. With the new stimulus package, we're talking about a 1.9 trillion, and they're going to be talking about an infrastructure stimulus of probably another 2 trillion. Our federal deficit was $10 trillion in 2008. Wow. It'll probably be 30 trillion this year.
That's crazy.
And it's inflationary.
Yeah.
So the administration we have in place right now is going to throw the kitchen sink, which is fine. There's a lot of things that need to happen, but there's a price to pay, and inflation is going to be one of them. They're talking about doubling the minimum wage, which is great. I think the average minimum wage is $7 an hour. They want to make it $15. Biden does. And again, I'm all for people making more money. It's inflationary.
Yeah.
It's inflationary.
Yeah.
So inflation is going to be a theme going forward, and unfortunately most retirees are not positioned in their portflolios to deal with that. A simple process or a simple thought would be if you have half stock and half bonds, and your bonds are earning 1% and inflation is running 2%, you have a part of your portfolio that's not making any money and is actually losing real value.
Right.
Let alone other types of risk with bonds such as rates rising.
Exactly.
And so, really just the basic portfolio a client has right now is probably not going to be very useful going forward. And so, it's a concern I have. And again, inflation is here, I think, to stay for a while. And anything we do stimulatively, like we're talking about, is going to cause more inflation.
Absolutely.
Housing is, I think we had more sales, or I think we passed 2006 in home sales, if I'm not incorrect.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
I know.
We're still in a pandemic.
I know.
And we have homing prices that are at all-time highs.
Absolutely.
So there's this big dichotomy in the marketplace that, to have the service sector and the retail sector that have really been hurt a lot in the traditional retail.
Yeah.
But then you have a lot of parts of the economy, construction, housing, technology has just gone crazy.
Absolutely.
And so really I think whatever we do with this new stimulus, it should be very targeted towards the people that really, really are impacted, because quite honestly, a lot of people are doing just fine.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that aren't. So on a personal note, I hope that things are more targeted towards people that need it. But regardless, there is inflation, and it is a problem, and it's something that needs to be addressed in clients' portfolios.
Sure. So I guess a lot of people in the viewing audience might be wondering, oh my gosh, this could affect me.
Yeah.
So what can I do today to make sure I'm protected years down the road?
Yeah, so right now, the first thing you want to do is reevaluate what you have.
Okay.
And to give you an example, most people know what hopefully they know, a target date fund. Or a target date fund is basically a mutual fund that a lot of people have in their 401k plans. They have them in their retirement accounts. And it's a fund that basically, let's say it's a 2020 fund, a 2030 fund, they call them. Basically, all it does, you get closer to retirement. So if it's a 2020 fund, it's going to own more bonds now than a 2030 fund because it's further out, so you own more stocks.
Okay.
So what happens is most retirees, as they get closer to retirement, especially in their 401k plans, a lot of their plans just buy more bonds. Well, I think I've already made the point. Bonds are probably not the place we want to go, so think about it. As people get older, we're taught, you need to own more bonds to have more, less risk in the market.
More security stability.
Well, right now, that's a problem. So a lot of the things that we've been taught, because inflation hasn't been here in 2 decades, it's not, so we have to look around the corner. I used to say, there's a reason that your windshield is bigger than your rearview mirror. Right? We got to look where we're going. Too many focus on where we've been.
That is
How did we do last year? And so you really want to focus on, and I always want to pride myself on what's coming around the corner? How do I position today to mitigate those risks? And so the first thing that somebody should look at is just, what do you own? If you own a lot of bonds, you probably want to talk to your advisor, talk to yourself, talk to me about, is there other ways? Because really people own bonds in a lot of ways to protect downside.
Sure.
There's other ways to protect risk than owning bonds, because bonds are paying us no money. So if half your money's in bonds and it's earning 1%, right? And then the other half is in equities, which hopefully they're going up.
Sure.
You're reducing return, but you're not getting any return from the bonds. And as rates rise, the value of the bonds will go down.
Sure, kind of like a teeter-totter, if you will.
So the problem is, I'll give you a real life example. So the last year, the stock market's up about 18%, the S&P 500. Bonds are up about 10%. Long-term treasuries up 10%, great. Well, that's what happened when the Federal Reserve reduced interest rates so low, bond prices went up, which was great.
Sure.
But in the last 5 months, you've seen the stock market go up 17% and long-term treasury bonds go down 10%. So that same portfolio that was up 13%, it was balanced, is now up 3.5%. Because the bonds are now starting to drag down the returns, because now you have low interest rates. There's not a lot of return that's being attributed to the bond portfolio, and actually the bonds have been losing money. So that's I think a real simple fix is how do we reallocate assets out of such a heavy bond allocation and use other things to mitigate risk that can still add return, but not be a dead asset like a bond earning nothing.
Okay. Perfect answer, David. And this is the greatest time for us to go ahead and open up the phone lines.
Sure.
Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. To the viewers at home, there's a phone number for you to call on your screen. That number is 866-739-3775. We know you may have a lot of questions regarding the topic of today's show, inflation. If so, David has the answers for you, and he's able to give you a complimentary consultation. First 10 callers only today. The number is 866-739-3775. You've worked your whole life to get to the retirement years. You should have the retirement that you deserve. Comfortable, peace of mind, and the ability to sleep at night. Again, first 10 callers only, 866-739-3775. We'll be right back after this very short commercial break.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
And welcome back to The Retirement Architect. My name is Cynthia Defazio. I'm joined today by David Reyes, and David is founder and chief financial architect of Reyes Financial Architecture. David, a great show we're having, and I love that we were able to dive into inflation because, like you mentioned, that's such an important topic and one that we haven't needed to talk about for the past 20 years or what have you. But in case someone is watching for the very first time today, let's talk a little bit about why you have such a passion for helping others.
Yeah, sometimes I have to apologize for I get a little fired up, right? But that's okay. I mean, you love what I do, and you know, it's because it's never-ending story, right? There's always something to do and to learn, and so that's probably the number one reason. But I think it goes back to my grandfather. When I first started, some people may know the story, but my grandfather, you know, he worked for Sears and Roebuck for many years when it was a thriving company. He was a television repairman back when, again, that was a job. And so I remember I used to wait for him. He had his little white truck with the red letters Sears and a ladder on top, and you know, I was like, it was really close to him. I was raised with my grandmother and my grandfather, and unfortunately, the year I became an advisor, 1995, he passed away after being in a long-term care facility for over 5 years. And he lost all of his assets. We had Health and Human Resources call my mother, and they were going to foreclose on the house. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff in my first year in the business. So I think that really impacted me. I mean, I think it did impact me in the sense that, you know, there's the term kind of depression baby. You know, I think I was the nursing home child, or whatever you want to call it. My grandfather went through all that, and it kind of like I went through it, and he lost everything he had. And so I think that's really served me well in the sense of how do you look at helping other people, and we got to protect what we have first. And if you don't have money, you can't have income. I don't care how much the stock market goes up, you know, if it goes down and you don't have the money to produce the cash flow, you know, and my grandfather, you know, bless his heart, he wasn't a very sophisticated guy, and I didn't know anything at the time anyway. I didn't know his finances before this, right? I only knew after the fact. I was 27 years old, right? And so, but I will tell you that definitely lit a fire under me and saying, you know, how do I prevent this from happening to people, you know, going forward? And so I think that's the underpinning of I think where my heart lies relative to helping people and being dead serious about how do we protect capital and grow capiple in that order. Sure, so and create income. So you know, that's a big piece, and a lot of people. Back then, that wasn't as common. You're talking, you know, 25 years ago. Now, I'm sure you've had experiences with family friends in nursing homes and people losing assets, and so absolutely, you know, it definitely drives me for sure.
And it's that compassion that you bring to the industry as well, because people love the fact that you listen to them. You're listening to what their goals are, their dreams are, their plans are. And a lot of times people don't have that same attention if they're working with, let's just say, a big box retailer. Not that there's anything wrong with those brokerages, but it's just different. Whereas you're giving someone peace of mind by really listening to what their individual needs are. And that's a testimonial to you.
Yeah, and I mean, that's part of why we've built the firm. We're a boutique firm. We're a small company. I mean, that's why we have for minimums, and we have things like that. I wish I could help everybody. I can't. And when you do real serious planning, when you're doing retirement planning, you're doing estate planning, tax planning. My partner's a CPA. We have our own in-house estate planning attorney. So we're doing deep dive planning. And not everybody needs all that, but at least we can do that. And a lot of people do. But the fact is that being able to do that, and taking the time to do that and listen. I always tell my wife, everybody has a story, right? We all have a story.
Sure.
We'll have a cross to bear, we'll have a story. And if you listen long enough and you care, you're gonna because their assets tell the same story too.
Yeah.
So once you get that, it's kind of like that's how I remember every client. They all have their own. So okay, I remember their story.
Yeah.
I remember their story, and it's pretty funny. As you get older, we get a little wiser, hopefully. But we all have a story, and if you're interested, a mentor of mine said, be interested, not interesting.
That's true.
And then you will be more interesting to people. We all want to hear about ourselves, and I think that helps. And as we get a little older and been around a little bit longer, we get a little more patient, and I would put myself in that camp.
Sure.
And so it's fun. I mean, I love what I do, and it's great to have a venue like this to be able to. We've done radio for many years, been 15 years, and now television our first year. So it's just, I'm very blessed to have the opportunity to do this.
Sure.
That's number one.
When we were going to the commercial break, I love watching the phones light up because I know people are calling in. They want to gain that complimentary consultation. So if they were blessed enough to receive that, David, what does it feel like when they first come into the office?
Well, it's awesome. I mean,
Okay.
it's the ability. Yeah, it's not for me, not for them. For me, in the sense that you just get to know these people. We're talking about everybody's story. Is the fact that they get to it's almost like I say you're half camp counselor, half advisor, because people love to be able to share things that they may be able to share with their own spouse or their kids about their finances or about health. If we don't have our health, we have nothing.
That's true.
Health is a big concern. So we're very blessed and very, very happy to have that opportunity to do that and to be part of the community too. I feel closer, I guess, because it's strange in one way. The radio show listener is a little different than the television audience.
Yeah.
It's just kind of have their own little unique differences.
Sure.
But it's just great to get. I feel like I have a bigger swath of San Diego. So it's nice to be able to help.
Absolutely. Well, we only have about 45 seconds left of the show this week, David. Any final bits of advice you want to give to the viewing audience before we go?
Sure, yeah. Get a second opinion, yeah. Your retirement's important, right? We go to the doctor for second opinions. We go have somebody review, whether it's me or somebody else, look at what you have. If you have any questions, it's a great time now because the market is recovered. It's a good time to be in a position of strength as opposed to the COVID crash, so to speak. So it's a good time to have somebody review what you have and make sure you're on the right track.
Okay. Well, David, thank you so much for another amazing show this week. I look forward to our show next week. To the viewers at home, most importantly, thank you for spending time with us again this week. The number is 866-739-3775. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we'll see you next week.